Dr. Jazz.
Thanks, Delfeayo, for finding the time. Appreciate it.
Jazz.
No problem.
You know, I've bbeen a fan since like the mid-90s, like since the Pontius Pilot's Decision came out. I still have it on CD, and I listened to that so much. I was just starting in jazz, and I was like, shit, man, it was a burning record. So,
Yeah, it's still one of my favorites, actually.
oh man, it's killing, really killing. But you know, the main reason is so you have a new record coming out actually these days, right? And
Yes.
I listened to it, and yesterday I had a student, and I was teaching a student a tune by the Meters, "Just Kiss My Baby," you know that one. Do-do-do-dum.
Yeah.
And he's a bass player, and then I listened to your record today again, and I heard so much of the Meters in there. And what's the story behind the record? First of all, I wanted to ask you about the compositions. I really love the stuff you've done as a composer. You know, the sidewalk sizzle. It's an amazing funky tune. Like, how did you write the music as a composer, first of all?
That song, you mean, in particular?
Yeah. Or in general, like, you know, the Basie's moods, obviously it's for Count Basie, but like in general, how did you write the music for this record?
Yeah, so the initial idea of the recording was to feature Tanya Boyd Cannon. Tanya's been in the band for a while. She is more of a gospel and an R&B singer. And when she joined the band, I guess I'd say we introduced her more to kind of the swing and the jazz tradition. So I wanted to document her work, songs like Exactly Like You and Sleeping Bee, and one of the crowd favorites, of course, is Round Midnight. So initially that was the idea, how to feature Tanya Boyd. Then we did those recordings, and my understanding of music, I would say for sure it has evolved. And you mentioned earlier my first recording, Pontius Pilot's Decision.
Yeah.
And when I recorded Pontius Pilot, what I wanted to do was to pay tribute to the two bands that were the most influential on me. That would be my brother Winton's band and Branford's band. So that's why, fortunately, I had both of their bands as well as my own band able to play. And while I'm still, influenced by them, I'd say that the function of the music is different now. So my take is that we need more of an optimistic and joyous approach in general. The world needs it. American music has been able to represent it very well. And we're able to do it coming from New Orleans. So that's the first idea. So I said, okay, we're going to have these songs that's going to feature Tanya Boyd Cannon, but I want to make a complete statement. Now, I think you haven't been to one of our shows probably. But
no, unfortunately, no.
Yeah, when folks come to the shows now, it's not just one thing. So if you go to a pop concert, it's great music. It can be great. I'm not going to say it's just great, but typically you know what it is. It'll be one kind of style, different songs, slow song, fast song, one kind of style. If you go to a brass band concert, it's going to be 90 minutes of some high energy, killing. We try to present something different. And what I'm realizing now is that the audiences actually crave, or they can appreciate that difference. So an audience comes, they don't really know what jazz is in the first place. They might think it's something that's going to be introverted, something that's not going to include them. They might think that it's not something that they can enjoy. So that's the first thing, is we want to play something that lets them know, hey, you're going to have a good time. But inside of that good time, I feel we have an obligation to be more than superficial. It's the difference between if you meet somebody on the corner and you start talking about football scores.
Sure. Yeah.
You can start talking about football scores for 30 minutes, or you can talk about football scores for 10 minutes, and then maybe you talk about maybe your grandmother has some issues, or your mother, or you start talking about things that they get insight into who you are, different from whether or not your team won or lost. So this is when I'm looking at the recording, I said, I don't want to only have the superficial, but I want the audience to get an idea of who we are collectively, who is uptown? What do we actually do? And this is what we do. So it's important to do the New Orleans thing, you know, because that's the introduction. That's like, yeah, we're gonna have a good time. And then after that, we go to what we'd say like the Broadway song, A Sleeping Bee. We have that kind of thing. And then only thing I did come in early with Oop Oop I Do in Kermit. That was the one that
Yeah, but it's fabulous. Yeah.
you know, I wasn't sure if I do that, but now right after Kermit and Oop Oop I Do, which is one of the great kind of celebration songs, we go to the Basie Moods.
Yeah, that's a beautiful one, man. Yeah.
You know, so, but now to answer your question about the actual, so that's what I'm thinking about the recording collectively is how can I present this different material to people? You know, Pontius Pilate did not have, I mean, it's my favorite, one of my favorite recordings. We had different grooves, but it's kind of all, it's in a similar space. Whereas when you hear Oop Oop I Do next to Basie Moods, it's like, that's pretty doggone different.
Yeah.
But in a concert, that's, to me, and I equate it to if you have a meal, it's like somebody says, hey man, we can either have this McDonald's or we can have this chef make us 8 courses. We can have McDonald's and then we can do Wendy's and we can do Burger King,
Yep.
do Popeyes. Now, hopefully when the chef makes the 8 courses, it's not gonna be 5 fish dishes and 3 chickens. Hopefully he's gonna have some kind of influence. Whatever that influence is, something that I've never experienced.
Yeah.
So that I say, wow, okay, he has something that I knew, something that I liked, something I didn't like so much, something that I wasn't familiar with. And in the end, you have that experience. And this is really the goal of the recording.
Hmm.
Now, I know I still have not answered your question
No, please. I love hearing this. So it's
about the composition, which is what I'm going to say. So the Sidewalk Sizzle that was the last song that I composed.
oh really okay.
And it was primarily because we didn't have a good opener. And I wasn't sure, we could have opened with Valley of Prayers, or we could have opened with Oop Oop I Do, but Oop Oop I Do, it's a great song, but it's doesn't really represent kind of the band.
It's quite specific in a sense. Yeah, no.
Yeah. So, and it just kind of came to me. These songs come to me. Usually it's either the bass part or it's the melody. But sometimes I wake up and I'm just hearing the melody. And we worked on it. Now, the great thing about that song, of course, we have Chris Severin on bass. He's one of the great bassists in the history of the music. Like, to play the type of bass line that he's playing, you can't script that. Like when you listen to the meters in the way that George Porter, who actually is a cousin, George Porter's a cousin, I think, on my dad's side.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Porter,
crazy.
but Porter, the kind of the funk tradition, and not trying to be an expert but they play singable bass lines. It's right in the groove. You know, not simple, but it's in the pocket.
Yeah.
Severin is playing the stuff that he's playing. It reminds me actually of the New Orleans not brass band, the traditional New Orleans music.
Mm.
So, for example, you listen to Louis Armstrong and Kid Ory.
Yeah.
That line of trombone playing with Kid Ory and Frog Joseph and Lucien Barbaran. Man, those guys, you can't, you either know how to do that or you don't.
Yeah.
You can't write that out because it's a combination of melody and harmony. They're playing the tuba part and the rhythmically, and then you got other things. So you have to just know what you're doing in order to do that. And this is what his bass line reminds me of. Because when you hear the bass line, you would never tell somebody to play that to be funky.
True. Yeah, absolutely true. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you can hit, Bootsy, you say, okay, man, play that, and it'll be funky. But this, you like, who would even play this? So, but which takes me to a great aspect, which was important about Pontius Pilate, which I find that we have less of, which is the importance of hiring and having musicians around you who can give you input.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I find that there's less of that. But when I did Pontius Pilate, I had these great musicians and these great bands, and fortunately, they gave me their opinions about things. And that to me is really important. Now, the way the music is, it's designed where one person comes up with the idea and he just does his thing. But I would say that the better experiences that I've had, it's when different people are able to be included and to give their opinions. And, you know, and that really helps.
You're basically really a liberal band leader, right? I mean, in a sense that you keep it open, or
yeah, I mean, I guess you could say it that way, but yeah, I mean, that's how I am in general. I believe in more inclusivity than exclusivity.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Just for example, the song "Sidewalk Sizzle," we played that at Snug Harbor. It was 2 months ago in June, and I told the audience, I said, "Look, we don't have a title for the CD. We decided on the title, but I said we don't have a title for this song, so we're gonna play it and see what you guys come up with." Sure enough, it was that one set, and the guy raised his hand. He said his wife came up with the song title "Sidewalk Sizzle."
Ah, you actually used it. Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, and Linda Gleason. I said we gave her credit on the CD. So, but that's an example of the more you are able to be inclusive, that there's a great potential. I would have never come up with that title, which is not to say that I wouldn't have had an okay title, but that's the perfect title.
It is, yeah.
And you know what I always try to do is just, and again, you have to watch it because sometimes it can get out of control. But as much as you can have more people involved, and that's the great thing about Uptown when you see us live is, and something that I've evolved as a band leader is to relinquish a certain kind of control and to trust the musician, and also to put the artists in a position in the best place where they can be themselves.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, was it always for you like that when you were leading bands? You know, when you had like, you know, John Clayton or Marvin Smitty on drums, or you know, Elvin on that one record, Minions Dominion, as a sideman, which is quite rare, and or Margaret Miller, you know, all these amazing cats. Like,
well, yeah, you know, so that, you know, that particular recording, you know, I played with Elvin for a number of years.
Yeah.
And the great thing about that particular recording is the communication between Elvin and I. So he sounds like Mulgrew sounds great and Branford sounds great. But when you hear my solos, it's just obvious that we just had a connection. We had to connect. And that's just something that is unique and special to the music. But the challenge is to lead and to have a clear direction. And different people do it in different ways. Like, for example, Elvin Jones, Elvin never liked to talk about the music.
Interesting.
He just would play, so for example, when I first joined the band, he would play certain songs we played it slow. I didn't realize this till later, but he played the song slow until we felt comfortable, and then he gradually sped the songs up. So he's thinking about it. He's not telling me, hey, we're gonna play these songs slow. Other people, and I was heavily influenced by Wynton, and Wynton he likes to control certain dynamics, certain things about the situation a lot more. And then you have somebody like Branford, and he likes to just have whatever happens. Yeah. So I'm somewhere in between that. So I would say that my evolution as a producer, more so than as a player, is finding that balance of allowing things to happen. I can look back and say that I'll give you an example. When I did Pontius Pilate's Decision, we did one of the recordings of The Weary Ways of Mary Magdalene was with Milt Hinton.
Yeah, wow, okay.
We ended up not using that version. But I wanted the band to go to double time. I just remember that. So Bob Hurst, the bassist, was at the session. And I'm saying, I think it was whoever was soloing. So we did the take in Milt, we played it, and I'm saying double time, double time, double time. And the song ended, and I went in the studio, and Bob Hurst was there, and he said, man, you can't make something hip happen. You have to allow something hip to happen. And maybe it happens and maybe it doesn't.
Yeah. And
I said, yeah, man, but you know, I want to have that effect of going to double time because, and he's like, now Bob Hurst he might be younger than me. He's either my age or young. He's not way close.
Yeah.
but his experiences as a performer were different from mine. So I'm thinking from a production standpoint of view, I want to go to double time, this and that. But I learned so much from him. I may have even given him producer credit on the record. And it's not because I hired him as a producer, but the insights that he gave me, that was exactly what I needed. But I'm saying that to say, I look back at the recording that I did with Clayton, and one thing that I've gotten out of the habit too is if something goes wrong, I stop the take. And I did that with the recording with Elvin and with Clayton, and both of them really got kind of upset. And one time I stopped and Clayton said, "Don't ever stop the tape." And I said, "Yeah, man, but we're messing up." He said, "Yeah, but it can be fixed." It was a certain kind of, he wasn't really upset, but it was a passion that he said it with. And I was like, damn, you're totally right. I'm busy thinking about the final product when I need to live in the moment. And he's absolutely right, because the problem is sometimes you can't get that momentum back.
True.
It's like you start a race and then you halfway through the race and they say, okay, stop now, let's go back. And so, but saying that to say, that's the thing that I'm working on, and I think I have a better hold on now, is sometimes you got to let things happen. It's like real life. You let things happen, and it may not be what you want, but it might be what you need.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. You mentioned Winton and Branford, and kind of musically they are different, obviously, and personality-wise, and you're in between, and there's Jason, and they're your father. And how was it for you, like, growing up with these guys, who are all monster composers and musicians, and then you come up, with trombone and
Well, they weren't like that growing up. It was no, but I'm just saying it was like a big brother thing. It's like we got the old school kind of patriarchal kind of family. And my dad wanted to be a musician. My mother wanted a big family. So, and she was a feminist, and she was the only girl or the only female in her family. Like there was her mother and there was her grandmother, but it was her. She had a bunch of brothers, and then she ended up with a bunch of sons. So that was her reward for being a feminist, was no other women around. So she had a real patriarchal kind of, and then, coming in the South of America and the Confederacy and all of that nonsense, man. So she had a thing with where she wanted my dad. She made sure that he was going to be there because her father didn't stick around, and she didn't want to be that statistic, but she kind of made us have a certain relationship with him. Like certain things, she would just make sure that he was involved with us. It's the best way that I can say it. So, but the other thing is she just kind of let us be wild. We would just do wild stuff. It was just, she said she'd take us to people's house. The first thing we would do, my brother Ellis and I, we'd go jump onto people's beds. We just, so it's like it's hard to explain, man. She just kind of let us have a certain kind of a freedom. But now, Branford, he did his thing. He was the oldest, so he was always trying to stay away from us. He never wanted to spend time with the youngsters and have time. Winton, he had his own thing that he was doing too. So it was really, my brother Ellis and I would spend a lot of time together. But it wasn't like people would think like the Jacksons, where there was these family meetings and everybody's playing music and figuring out a part. My dad worked a lot. He taught school from whatever time till 3 or 4. And then he'd come home for about 30 minutes, and he had to play solo piano from 5:30 to 10 a lot of the times. That was back when I was in 6th grade, I think from 6th to 9th or 10th grade. So he wasn't really around a whole lot of the time. He was out making the bacon, and my mother took care of all of the other stuff. But I was always supportive of Branford and Winton and what they were doing, especially Winton was around, and that's how I got into production.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, how you got into the production business. I mean, because it's like a completely different beast than being a player, right? In a sense. I mean.
Yeah, but I was just in the right place at the right time. I mean, they needed recordings made. They needed somebody to press the red button. It was as simple as that. So we had cassette, and Winton didn't like the sound of his recording. So then I went on a mission to try to figure, why didn't the record sound good? And so it's just been this long journey to get the ultimate sound. But I would say for years, I've just considered myself to be at their service, which was fine to me because I was the younger brother. I didn't mind helping out. And lo and behold, I put out this Pontius Pilate recording, really not thinking much of it other than, hey, I'm just having a good time and we're doing this stuff. And
yeah, how did you decide to do that one actually? When was the moment you said like, shit, I want to become a band leader? Why then? I mean, like maybe a stupid
Well,
question.
you know, I've gone through most of my life without a clear plan, actually, in all honesty. And really, the story is, you wouldn't probably even believe it. So I had a manager, Emery Wilkins, and she was working with me with production. And she said, you know, I played some trombone. At any rate, I graduated from Berkeley, and it's like, okay, what am I going to do with my life now? I got one or two productions. I can't do that. So she said, well, you need to put out a CD, a record. You need to put out a record if you're going to get gigs or work. So I made a demo tape, sent it to Columbia and to RCA. They didn't like it. They weren't interested at all in it. So in 1990, I got a gig at the Jazz and Heritage Festival. I think it was like $2,500 for the whole band. I got Reginald Veal, Cyrus Chestnut, Ralph Peterson, Donald Harrison.
Wow.
Branford. I don't even know how I got these people to show up.
That's a killing band.
So Marlon Jordan. So I wrote this music. I said, okay, I'm gonna just start writing music. I wrote a handful of tunes. I think I hadn't written Pontius Pilate. I'd written Barabbas.
Barabbas, yeah, that's a killer one.
And I'd written Barabbas and Mary Magdalene. Actually, a guy in high school wrote that. That's another whole story. But so we had Mary Magdalene, we had Barabbas, and I might have had 3 other songs. So we do the Jazz and Heritage Festival. The week after this, I get a call, and it's from a guy named Gary Gersh. Gary Gersh is the president of Geffen Records. Gary Gersh says to me, he says, man, I was at your show at the Jazz Fest. And he said, I think that the quote that he said was, you know, Branford makes very good records. Winton makes great records. I think you can make better records than both of them.
Well, yeah.
Which I was like, so first I'm like, Geffen Records? Like Guns N' Roses? It's like, so, but here's the irony. It wasn't the jazz guys. It was this guy heard the music and so that led to these negotiations, and I ended up landing at RCA. Once the word got out, then I started getting calls. Hey man, I'm just checking in with you. And I decided not to go with Geffen because it was going to be GRP Records.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be, it was going to be GRP. So at any rate, I ended up going to RCA, and I turned down a contract with Columbia. They kind of wanted to have the whole Marsalis family. I did turn down a contract with them, thinking that I would get the exclusivity from RCA. At any rate, looking back, probably should have stayed with Columbia, but it's what it is. But you know, we had a good time, and that's how the record came to be. And I did the one record, and then I had another record planned, and that's when Branford went on the Tonight Show, and I was going to record with his band, and we couldn't pull the music together. Like he wasn't in the right space to do what I needed. And then when I went back to the record company, they were like, yeah, well, we kind of need Branford's band. And at that point, I decided to get out of the record contract, which I probably should, you know, looking back. But I was like, man, I'm not, you know, if you sign me, then you sign me. Like the deal wasn't you're signing me to sign my brothers. So that's kind of how it went on. And so anyway, that's kind of the history of how that happened. So.
No, it's a killing record, really. I love that record still. You know, it's more than 30 years old, but you put it on, it sounds really like modern still. And the band.
And my brother Jason, man, was really a big part of that too. Jason was like 12 years old, but he loved Tane, and we loved the whole idea of what they were doing and what Winton was doing with the Black Codes. And, you know, what the idea was. The idea was just, let's do our version of that.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, man, we're going to come out here and change it. But I still had that idea, like, the music had a certain quality to it that's very accessible. It's something that I think is very important for audiences. Yeah. You know, today, though, I I'm trying to work out. The first thing today is like I'm more insistent that we swing, that we play songs that swing. One, because we can do that, and not a lot of bands can swing. It's something that guys can't do. And I say, to me, the people who can do it have an obligation to do it. Like, if you actually can swing, at some point you need to be swinging. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like
going. Yeah, I mean,
Michael Jordan playing baseball. We're like, come on, man, really? I mean, yeah, okay, you can play baseball. That's what you want to do, but
yep.
So that's one of the things. So I woke up one morning and I heard that Basie Moods, and I literally sang it into the phone, just like it. You know, I just woke up and I just heard what it was. Dee-doo-be-dee-doo-doo. So I'm singing it.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's so beautiful.
And then, you know, I wrote it down, and then we start playing it. And once that I think is just a great song. But I want to play more music like that, because that has an effect on audiences.
Oh man, yeah. To see that live, I mean, that's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing like a funk set and people is up and they dancing, if you go to that, it's almost like you've been talking about something that's okay, and then all of a sudden somebody drops something on you, and you're like, oh, okay, really?
Yep.
And then you hear it out, and you say, oh, okay, well, so, but that's you know, and it's important for other bands to hear us. See, what I'm realizing now, I'm just trying to get as much work as possible, because it's not only the audience. It's like we'll talk about the 60s and John Coltrane and Ornette Coleman, and said, but the fact that the Basie Orchestra was out there swinging, and the fact that that sound was in the air was important. The fact that we're out here and that sound is in the air, it's important for other bands to hear, because that's going to impact them some kind of way.
Definitely.
Like, I don't care what you're playing. If you heard the Basie Orchestra in 1968, you were like, oh, okay, that's gonna, whatever you're playing is going to be better because you heard them and you're like, damn. So that's what, you know, I'm hoping that for us as a band collectively, we can get to that point where people hear us and say, okay, they're playing the brass band stuff. Or yeah, we're not going to sound like the Rebirth on a street corner, but it's going to have enough authenticity that people say, wow, that's killing. And we go into the swing, it's like, yeah, okay, the heads is bobbing. Then we go to the modern, which I think is also important. I've gotten away from the modern too much, I think. But as an element, I think it's really important to get more into the modern. So that's what I'm looking for, more modern music. And the other stuff we have covered, if we have Tanya Boyd Cannon, you know.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It's like, you know what, as a musician also, I sometimes get bored, you know. I go to a concert in Europe, let's say here, and you hear like a killing band playing in 11, and they're playing some quadruplets. It's fantastic, and the lines are all this out shit and like intervals, and it's like, yeah, it was good, you know, great. Then another concert is the same, and then I miss something in Europe, like what you guys did, you know, that you go there and it's like, man, it's like this. You know, this energy, and in a way it sounds simple, but it's of course not, because it's swinging, and but this is something that's so important, what you said, you know. I think especially in Europe, I think we're lacking of that, because we don't have that so much coming over. So
well, but you know, it's all about I don't know, it's about a number of different things. And I think the challenge here in America, because the racial component is so strange and has always been so strange, that we have made certain adaptations. I think that we're more honest about the racial thing here, perhaps, than in some places in Europe. I think there is kind of this perception that, well, we don't have the race thing going like the Americans do. But I would imagine that it does exist. But I'm saying that the important element is, from a musical standpoint of view, all of the Americans have just embraced what you could consider Black music, or the music that came, you know, from the motherland.
Definitely.
The challenge that the Europeans have, as far as what you might consider jazz, is not wanting to accept that it's black music, it's black American music. And I think the challenge, like people will talk about European jazz, and I say, yeah, there's no real such thing as that. It's like, I mean, jazz is a tenuous term anyway.
Yeah,
but
yeah, okay.
if it's jazz, it's jazz. Any more than I would say I'm playing, and I said I studied classical music in high school, like on a serious level. Now, let's say I dedicated 20 years of my life or 40 years of my life to composing like Wagner or like Bach or Beethoven, these guys. That line would almost assuredly never go Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, Wagner, Marsalis.
No, yeah.
It's damn near, it's not gonna happen. And nor would I say, man, I'm doing like an Afro-Germanic, like I wouldn't have to say I got the Afro-classical. And the other thing is from an honesty standpoint of view, it's like, if we're dealing with classical music, I don't have to ask you, well, who's the black guy? We can see what I'm saying? We can talk about Beethoven and Mozart, and I don't have to start saying, yeah, well, man, what about Hale Smith? Or I'm forgetting the name. Because I'm just about, okay, who is the best at it? Whereas a lot of times what we find is that we have to have that inclusion. You have to say, okay, this is cool, but who are the white guys? Who are Bill Evans or, and I'm just like, okay, if there's a guy that's in there, then include him. But let's not say that it's mandatory. It's not mandatory for me to study great classical music. I don't have to have a black guy.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
exactly.
saying?
So, yeah. Makes sense.
But I think that the real issue is the need for something to have a credibility, or the need to have something that is identifiable. Like, for example, I was saying earlier, I'd asked Elvin Jones about playing Love Supreme. And it was like, damn, I didn't, actually somebody else asked him. He said, man, what was that like playing on Love Supreme? And his answer was, we just went in the studio and did what we did every day. Which is like, it wasn't a big deal to us.
Yeah.
So it could have been Love Supreme, it could have been Crescent, it could have been anything. We went in the studio, John brought the music, and we played it. That's literally what he said. He wasn't worried about, man, we got to make a masterpiece. This has to be great. So I think what you find when you're describing these guys and they're playing in 11 and they're playing this killing stuff, that the music is out of the realm of real functionality.
Yeah.
So I would say it's like if like you have scientists and they're in the lab all day long and they're trying to solve problems. Now we have musicians who are trying to solve problems just for the sake of solving the problems.
Yep.
So that's what it is. Like, man, what kind of problem are you trying to solve? Well, how can I play an 11? Okay, and once you solve that, what happens? Oh, I don't know. Whereas before, the long history of the music, to me, it's been the evolution of how the music swings. So Louis Armstrong and that generation, they had one sense of swing concept. And then what we would consider the swing era, Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Benny Goodman, these guys, they had a different concept of swing. And then Charlie Parker came along, that's a different concept of swing. Now you get to Miles and Coltrane, and that's a different concept of swing. Now Ornette Coleman, the swing is always evolving.
Yeah.
And not to say it's the better or worse, it's always evolving. And so what we should be focusing on as musicians is, if not swing, the groove, however you want to say it. I'm not trying to get tied up in the semantics.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think what now though is they're not thinking about the groove, they're not thinking about the swing, they're not thinking about how it's hitting the people. They're just thinking about, man, how can I do something that's unique? How can I make my stamp? And I don't get the feeling that was what any of the great musicians were thinking,
Exactly.
that they have to make their individual stamp. They were like, they want to be the best that they can. And anyway, sorry, I'm talking a lot.
No, that's why we're here. I mean, no, but you make such a good point. You put on a Love Supreme now and it still sounds so modern. it stands with any record that came, and if you put on numerous records from last year or this year, it'll be like, it's a good record, but
Yeah.
like 2 years from now, it will just, yeah.
But another thing, and this is what I'm realizing about the bands and the importance of the bands is, if Elvin Jones does not play with John Coltrane, then history looks at him an entirely different way.
Oh yeah.
He would have been like a good drummer. It's just because no other musical situation allowed him to flourish,
Yeah.
And another point that I just learned about Coltrane, this recording, Miles Davis in Stockholm, 1960.
Yeah, sure.
That's one of the worst recordings for musicians today. And it's the worst recording because Coltrane is making the worst decisions as a bandmate. And what that recording promotes. Now, what he's playing, if you take it separate from the band.
Yeah.
Oh my, you're just like, but what we find is, to me, subconsciously listening to that record convinces us that it's okay to have no regard for what the musical situation is in order for ourselves to shine. Now, Coltrane might have been letting Miles know, this is the last time you're going to call me as a sideman. So we don't know what the backstory is.
Yep.
And again, I'm looking at it objectively. Coltrane, I mean, I'm not at all trying to diminish his talent or what he did or the hard work ethic. But what I am saying is that would be an example of how not to play in a musical situation. And, a lot of trouble that we have with the guys come on the bandstand, and that's what they want to do that. They don't want to do, so we have a big band. They don't want to really do what a big band traditionally wants. They want that. They want people to look at them the way that they look at Coltrane. It's like people aren't going to look at you that way because people don't like that.
Mm.
If we had a choice and we gave an audience Johnny Hodges playing Satin Doll or John Coltrane in Stockholm, you think they're going to pick, there's no possibility they're going to pick Coltrane in Stockholm.
Yeah,
it's just, who's going to do that? Like, why would they?
Yeah. Makes sense. But Delfeayo, not to take too much of your time, we mentioned Elvin so many times. Like, how did you get that gig with Elvin, first of all, and to play the first concert with him? And what did you learn the most from him? How was he like? As a band leader, you said like he didn't talk much, but
well, ironically enough, I met Elvin in '88. He didn't even know I played trombone. I produced a Marcus Roberts record that he played on. And he had done things with Wynton. He just knew I was Wynton's little brother. In 1993, I played a festival in Brazil. And he remembered me. I'm pretty sure that's the distance from when I saw him. And he said, anyway, I saw him in Brazil. And he said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Hey, man, I got my band." And he said, "Band?" I said, "Yeah, man, I play trombone. My band is out here playing." He said, "You play trombone?" And his wife, Keiko, said, "We're doing a record and we need a trombone." And I was like, "Okay, whatever, call me." So they called me and I made the record date. And she was like, "You want to join the band?" And I was like, "What? I've got my own band." Not really, but she said, "We're going to Japan." I was like, "Yeah, I've never been to Japan." So, yeah, maybe I had been to Japan once then. At any rate, that was kind of how it started. So I went to Japan, but I think Elvin, he was perceptive. He needed, like, guys who loved Coltrane, they're thinking Elvin Jones needs a guy that can run like Coltrane. That Elvin didn't really even like that. Like, what I mean is that was the part of the job.
Yeah.
Elvin listened. He liked Big Mama Thornton. He liked Louis Armstrong. That wasn't if he had his choice of, okay, I'm going to listen to some music, it would be that old, like he liked stuff that had feeling and rhythm. And so I think that he needed that. And there's a certain kind of there's a leadership that goes along with being a producer that I think he needed somebody that was more solid in the band.
Yeah.
Like that, it just it's hard to explain, but I would say the thing that I learned the most from Elvin Jones is the importance of strong rhythm. Because if I'm playing bad rhythm, it prevents him from doing what he wants to do. So that's the most important thing, is that when I play, I try to make sure that my time is always very solid.
Yeah.
Because if I'm wavering, like, you don't play the changes, he's like, whatever. But you mess up the time, then you're gonna it's like, okay. So that's what I would say the most important element is, just to have strong time.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, those bands were killing. I mean, those early '90s, like, amazing stuff with Elvin.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah. Delfeayo, otherwise, what are your plans for the upcoming months promoting the new record? Do you have any plans of coming to Europe also, or not really?
Man, we need help. How can we get over there? We've been trying to get over there.
Yeah.
I've been to Europe like maybe twice since 2006.
Oh man, wow.
Yeah. So I'd love to come over there, because the band is really, man, we got a great band. We have a great time. But tell the folks to bring us over there.
Yeah, try the festivals at least, North Sea and all these. I think they have the budgets at least to cover the plane tickets and stuff like that. So
yeah,
then you get other gigs.
They haven't been so interested. So we're just gonna keep putting the music out, and we're gonna just keep doing what we're doing. But the idea at this point, I have a number of songs that I've composed, and different music that are suites of music, and some songs that have stories, where it's not coming to me what I wanted to say, but like a fictitious story that it is didactic in nature. So I'm going to probably record some of that. I got a family heirloom suite. I've got some songs that are during the pandemic.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So, but that's the big thing with the band, is just we're going to get to more swing and get to more modern music, and we're going to keep the funk coming.
Yeah. Beautiful. Man.
Bro.
Thanks for sharing some of these thoughts. Really appreciate it. And
no, it's good talking to you, man. Good luck with the students and everything.
Yeah. If you're going to be in Europe, drop me a line.